Hey guys, what is going on in the kitchen? My name is Famsalads. Welcome back to another video, and today's video is about keyboards. To start this video, I need to differentiate the two types of keyboards: mechanical keyboards and regular keyboards, aka rubber dome keyboards, aka silicone, aka garbage. Work off of a small rubber dome on a motherboard, while mechanical keyboards work off of something called switches that are normally soldered into a keyboard. These switches can fit into three categories: linear, tactile, and clicky. First off is the anatomy of an average linear switch: bottom housing, copper leaf, spring, stem, and top housing. Most linear switches are actually designed pretty much the same, not much variation there. So instead of discussing the slight variations between linear switches, I'm going to be moving on to tactile switches. My favorite switch, actually. Now, tactile switches have a lot in common with linear switches, such as the top and bottom housing, copper leaf, and the spring. But the interesting part is the stem. Rather than being completely straight and more linear, the stem has a slight curvature, or bend, bump, and depending on how large the bump is, the tactile bump means how large the pop is when the key is pressed. These bumps can actually range from absolutely massive or minuscule, and depending on how large the tactile bump is, also depends on how large the pop is when the key is pressed. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's pretty much just the basics. Moving forward, we have the final variety, that being clicky switches. Again, the top housing, bottom housing, the spring, and the copper leaf are all exactly the same. But something that makes the clicky switch absolutely unique is something called a click jacket on the stem. The stem is nothing like any other switch. Instead, it has this small piece of plastic that clacks down to the bottom and then back up, leaving a clack when a key is pressed. Clicky switches are actually quite popular. Now, whether the switch comes from a pre-manufactured keyboard, or whether someone actually likes the sound of the clicks, that's completely fair. And whether or not they value silence is not my place to say. And anyways, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of switches out there, and I understand that can be really disorienting, but there are ways to easily identify them. Take Cherry MX, for example, the pioneers of the mechanical switch. They will let you know that they are the manufacturers of the switch. They will let you know that they are the manufacturers of the switch by prefacing every switch that they've ever made with Cherry MX in the title. Take Cherry MX Brown, for example, or better yet, take McDonald's having every menu item be prefaced by Mick. There are also ways to identify specific switches within specific manufacturing companies. And the way to identify specific switches within brands is by looking at the words that follow the brand name. Example, you can tell the difference between a Gatoron Yellow, a linear switch, or a Gatoron Silver, another linear switch, or maybe it's clicky, I don't know. Or perhaps take, for example, Cherry MX Brown, a tactile switch, or Cherry MX Blue, a clicky switch. Both are made by the same brand, but they're completely different switches made for completely different things or completely different people. Honestly, I can rant for hours and hours and hours on switch variations, from Tangerine V2s, or there's way too many to list. But honestly, that's not the only customizable part about a keyboard. That's the magic of mechanical keyboards, in my opinion. You can change the color, the sound, the shape, and yes, even the size. You can have 1 key, 2 key, 3 key, 4 key, 60 key, 70 key, 90 key, 100 keys. Some dude made a keyboard that's 3 keyboards, so that's 300 keys. You can even have a volume knob if you want. And some people find it strange to remove the number pad or any other various parts of the keyboard, but when disk space is important, it's a really smart option to free up said disk space. This is a lot of customization, and I understand. There's one last thing to cover before I end the video. Besides chord stylization, lube, mods, LEDs, and a couple other things that I won't be mentioning during this video, or probably any video for that matter, something that you can change is keycaps. Now, if you were overwhelmed with switches at any point during this video, you sure as heck are going to be overwhelmed by the amount of customization options that you have with keycaps. There are double shot keycaps, meaning 2 types of plastic, dye sublimation, clear lettering, BBT, metal keycaps, wooden keycaps. There's so many keycaps, and the only kind of advice that I can say is do the research for yourself. There's a lot of cool keycaps out there that you would benefit from looking at yourself. It's really fun. It's really fun if you get down to it. And if you're an absolute nerd. Nerd! It's, if you have like a couple extra $100, it's a really fun hobby to get into. It's also really fun. I do have to say, please do your research before you grab a soldering iron. Before I end this video off, I do have to say, please, if you are going to make only one keyboard for yourself and never any more keyboards, please, for the love of Christ, go for hot swap. Hot swap is your goal. You'll be able to take out any switches and replace them with any other switches at any point in time. No soldering, no desoldering, no 4th degree burns. It's great. Anyways, that's really everything that I have. And that's all I can really say on this subject. I'll catch you on the next one.